What does the pre or pre-fade button do on your audio mixer? Where do you find it? When should you use it? When should you avoid using it? And how does it compare to a post or post-fade button that you might find on other audio mixers? We put this video together to answer all of those questions for you. In this video, I'm using the Yamaha MG12XU analog audio mixing console. If you are looking for pricing or specs for anything that you see in this video, please do check out the links down in the description below, where you'll find current up-to-date pricing and specs for everything that you see in this video. So first of all, where do you find a pre or pre-fade button on your audio mixer? These buttons are typically located up near your aux controls per channel. So if you have a 10-channel mixer, you should find 10 different pre-fade buttons along the midsection of your audio mixer. So how does the pre-fade button actually work? In order for the button to work, before you do anything else, you do need to have your gain set up, and the channel does need to be turned on. On some audio mixers, they have mute buttons instead of on buttons, so you need to make sure that it's unmuted and that the channel is actually live. The mute button or the on button does supersede everything else in the channel strip in order to make things work. So the channel needs to be turned on 5.6 here, and then the pre-fade button will toggle the default state of an aux send from being post-fade into being pre-fade. So there's a lot of jargon there. So what does that actually mean? By default, if I have this fader up to 0, and if I'm sending something to a monitor channel for a background vocalist, say, by default, if I turn them down on the fader for the main stereo mix, the monitor channel will follow it in a relative way. So if I go from 0 to -15, then the monitor will also take a roughly 15 decibel hit as well. It'll track the fader. But if you press this pre-fade button, then it will completely ignore the fader. Like I said before, the channel does have to be turned on in order for this to work, but it will ignore the fader. So if the fader is all the way down, it will be using a mixture of the gain from the preamp and the level set on the aux send to determine the level that goes out through that aux1 output for a stage monitor, an aux feed, or something like that. So that's how the button would actually work. Now, when would you use pre-fade over leaving it with the default that's post-fade? Pre-fade is really useful for setting up monitors on somebody where their mix in the front of house is changing constantly, but they don't really care about that. A really good example of this would be for background vocalists. In some songs in the set, you might have background vocalists at the front of the mix. In some songs in a band set, the background vocalist might be buried in the mix. But doesn't matter about any of that. The vocalist still needs to hear themselves in the floor monitor at a consistent volume. They don't care whether it's tracking the front mix or not. They just need to be able to hear themselves to make sure that they're on pitch or in key. So in that case, something like pre-fade is really important because it's going to ignore the fader for them. So when would I avoid using the pre-fade button? I would avoid using the pre-fade button on any aux that you need it to accurately track what's happening in the room out of your main stereo mix. A really good example of this is you might have a dedicated aux for your live stream. You want it to basically track what's happening in the room with a couple little modifications. So let's say that your MC is on channel 5.6 here. We're going to leave them up at that 0 unity or triangle position on this aux send, and maybe you have some background music or something. Maybe you have video sounds in the feed. Video can be quite overbearing on a live stream, so maybe we'll leave this just a couple ticks less. Now, if both of these faders are up at 0 on your live stream, the music will be reflected just a little bit quieter. But also, if you turn it down, it will track that and go all the way down as well. That's a really good example of when I would use post-fade on an aux send instead of using this pre-fade option that you have here. You want it to accurately track what's happening, but maybe you do want to modify a couple little things, but still keep it relative to the main mix. Now, in some audio mixers, everything that I just said is reversed. By default, everything will be pre-fader, and you'll have a button here that says post or post-fade, and that will change the setting from being pre-fade to being post-fade. It's just two different ways of looking at it. It's much like how Yamaha has on buttons and Mackie has mute buttons. It's just a classic. They just assume the default would be the other way for their use case, but it can still do the same functionality. You just have to be aware that some audio mixers are completely opposite of what you might be used to. I hope this video is helpful. I hope you got a couple good examples there on when you may or may not want post-fade or pre-fade for your aux sends. If you have any questions about anything that I said in this video, please leave a comment down in the comment section below. Again, if you are looking for pricing or specs for anything that you see here, we do have links down in the description below. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.